All right, everybody, good afternoon and welcome to New York JFK. Today we're going to be starting episode number 1 of our Instrument Approach Types series. And this is a video that's been pretty requested on my channel, so we're going to go over it. I am a real-world commercial pilot as well. I shoot these same types of approaches every single day. The reason that we're starting from JFK today is because as you kind of climb through the ranks of being an airline pilot, a lot of the simulator training that you will do for whatever reason is based out of JFK. A lot of the approaches that you're going to do, it's going to be a lot like this. This is real-time, real weather actually, so it's a pretty crappy day here in JFK. But it's going to be weather that's exactly like this, and you're going to have to be taking approaches down to Mints. But anyway, I will try my best to explain to you exactly what we're looking at whenever we brief approaches and what we are expecting. Today specifically we're going to be talking about ILS approaches and what we can expect with those. So let's learn how to shoot an ILS approach from a professional pilot, and first we got to get flying. So let's go ahead and jump inside the airplane and we will see you guys in the air.
Positive rate.
Alrighty guys, so we have reached our cruising altitude today of 3,000 feet. We are all cleaned up and everything like that from our departure out of New York John F. Kennedy Airport, and we've just set up a hold at a roque, which I hope goes well. We're in the PMDG 737 today because I believe this plane's one of the best in terms of systems depth and stuff, and I would have preferred to fly the MAX today, but honestly, with doing this video, I wanted to be as accurate as possible, and the PMDG 737 would definitely be that aircraft. So here we are. We are going to be entering the hold here shortly. I hope it just does the hold. I don't know what this extra little line is out here, but anyway, well, worst case scenario, we'll just go into a heading mode and kind of go from there. So let's talk about ILS approaches. So we will start off by talking about the different, I guess, revisions, we'll call them, of ILS approaches. So taking a look here, this is the chart. This is a government chart. This is not Navigraph. You would see, in the real airline world, you would see a JEP chart. But for right now, I thought maybe it would be better to go over the government chart, just because for most people who are going through flight training and stuff, this is what you're going to see, this is what you're going to look at. And at the end of the day, really, the JEP chart and this chart, the government charts, are presenting you with the same information. So yeah, so we're just going to take a look at the government chart for today. First things first, one of the first things, again, that some of the questions that I've gotten were, what is the approach, like if it's an ILS Zulu or an ILS, like it would say ILS Z right here, ILS Y or ILS X. That basically is just saying it's the same approach, it's the same runway, it most likely is going to be a very similar procedure. The only thing different with that is maybe it has a different missed approach point, or maybe it has a different, it's going to have the same frequencies and stuff like that. Maybe it has slightly different minimums. So really, there's no necessarily right answer on what approach to use, especially in flight sim. In the real world, you're looking at capabilities of your aircraft. Is there a reason, specifically that we wouldn't be able to take an ILS X-ray versus an ILS Yankee approach? Probably not. Maybe they have slightly different, like, initial approach fixes or different routing kind of into the same fix. So things like that. It's pretty trivial. It's one of those things that ATC, when you check on with them, they're going to say, hey, expect the ILS Yankee runway, whatever. And if there's a reason why you wouldn't be able to do that, you would have briefed that with your crew member, and you'd be able to tell them, hey, we're unable, can we get the ILS Zulu approach? But for flight simulator purposes, you really shouldn't have too much of an issue about that. That's really not something an issue that you should run into too often, especially in flight training. So that is X-Ray Yankee Zulu, and that's also not just with ILS approaches either. That could be with RNAV approaches. Could be a little bit different with RNAV approaches in terms of LPV and RNP and stuff like that. So we'll go over those whenever we talk about RNAV approaches, but for this purposes of this episode, we're only going to be talking about ILS approaches. So yeah. All right. So with that out of the way, let's start with the super duper basics. What is an ILS? An ILS is an instrument landing system. It uses ground navigation, unlike an RNAV approach, which uses some ground-based navigation, but mostly satellite navigation. So yeah, it provides lateral and vertical guidance down to the runway. So starting off in the top left corner, and how you brief an approach plate. All right, let's just get this out of the way as well. How you brief an approach plate is you go top to bottom, left to right. So with the exception of this, maybe starting with the approach and runway that you're going to be using, right? So that, hey, this is, you start off with your crew member. Hey, this is the ILS or localizer runway 4 going 4 left going into JFK. Hey, we're on the same page. I've got the same chart. Oh shoot, I had the RNAV to 4 left pulled up. Let me get the ILS. Okay, cool. Plate is valid till October 30th. That's what this is right here. This is the validity of your chart. Are you, like, if this was out of date, if it said it was valid till today's October 13th, if it said it was valid till the 12th, you technically wouldn't be able to legally shoot this approach. And there's some other things you'd have to do and verify all the waypoints and they're unchanged and this and that. So that's why it's important to make sure your charts are updated before you go out and fly. So with the exclusion of these two things, it's top to bottom, left to right. So then I would say, okay, this is the localizer DME frequency right here. In the top left corner, this 110.9 in bold. A couple things about this. It's the frequency of the localizer. That frequency alone does not give you your glide slope. That is the localizer frequency. That is not a glide slope frequency. Glide slope does have a frequency, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it's not like anywhere published. Nobody really cares about the glide slope. The reason why it says or localizer runway 4 left is because if you did happen to lose your glide slope for whatever reason, if the glide slope was in op, which it would be NOTAMed and everything like that, so you wouldn't generally have to worry about that. You can just shoot this as a localizer approach. So you can shoot this without a glide slope. You just have to use your own vertical guidance, which we can get into later. Here in the PMDG 737, what you do next is you'd come down here, verify this as ILS, and you type 110.9 and switch and put it in the active frequency. And now you have the current localizer frequency tuned up. Localizer frequencies will always have 3 digits. It will always start with a 1. So you're never going to see 010. You're never going to see 210. You're always going to see a 1 and then a series of numbers, 1099, 119. You're going to, stuff like that. You're not going to see anything less than that. Okay. Other than that, you want to set up, the next thing you talk about is your approach course. So 044 is the final approach course. That's just literally, you can see it right here on the chart, right in the middle there. That is your inbound course to the runway. It's your course inbound on the localizer. And it also is what the runway number is. So it's 044. This is runway 4 left. So 044 final approach course. Again, in the 737, you do have to set those. It's a little bit more of a manual aircraft. That's kind of why I want to do this instead of the Airbus as well. You have to set them here and here so that your aircraft knows what course you want it to fly inbound on the localizer. If you don't do that, it won't know what course you want it to fly. In the 737, we can verify that we have those. We can verify all that information here. We'll do flaps 30, 155 is set, and then you have 110.9 and 044 final approach course. So that's whenever you're flying, it's in your init ref page. You can verify that there, Obviously, you want to back it up on the chart over here as well. You don't want to just go off this in case you have some incorrect information put in for whatever reason. But yeah, for the most part, that is that. Okay, next up is the runway landing distance. So we have 110. We have 11,000 feet of runway available to us right now. Not going to be a problem. It's not going to be too short. That checks with all of our landing calculations. That's basically all you want to check, but you do want to mention that in your briefing. Not really something that you mention in a briefing unless you're on like a check ride or something and you don't want to miss anything. But some of these remarks right here: radar required for procedure entry, DME or radar required for localizer only. If you're going into JFK, odds are you're going to have radar. But if you were flying a Cub or something where you don't have DME equipment or something like that, you would only be able to do the or I guess if you didn't have DME equipment, you wouldn't even be able to shoot the localizer approach here, because it says radar required for procedure entry, so you can get vectored in. Then it says DME or radar required for localizer only. So you would not be able to do the localizer only approach if you didn't have any DME or radar equipment on board your aircraft. Radars are required for the procedure entry, which would start from this VOR right here. If you wanted to do that, you'd take it into a roke and then do a procedure turn to get back in there. Or actually, I think you could start it from there, but you could also start it from the JFK VOR and track this outbound and then do a procedure turn and come back in. So that is the little remarks tab there. Missed approach, we're climbing to 2,000 feet and then a climbing right turn to 3,000 on the JFK VOR DME radial 062. So radial that's from the VOR. So the VOR is right here, so radial 062 to Duffy intersection, which is identified by 14.8 DME from the VOR. So, and again, it says basically the same exact thing on the JEP chart. This really is not anything different or anything unusual. Like, I know it looks different than the JEP chart, but it really is pretty much the same information if you're following along with the JEP chart. So don't be scared by that. You're coming off the 62 radial, which you can see right here. You're coming off the 62 radial from the JFK VOR, which is right here. You can see that. The Kennedy VOR. To Duffy intersection, which Duffy intersection, how would you know that you're at Duffy intersection if you didn't have, you know, GPS or anything like that? It's 14.8 DME from the VOR on this radial. So that is why, you know, this says you need radar and stuff like that. That's why, or at least, you know, some DME equipment, because if you have to go missed, how else are you going to know what 14.8 DME from the VOR is? And for the localizer inbound as well, but that's another reason why you need that. And then this is the holding fixed Duffy. You'd also, again, if you're on a check ride for check ride purposes, you know, you'd want to talk about how you're going to enter this hold. You could do a parallel entry into this hold or a teardrop entry into this hold. That's about it. And then you can hold out here at Duffy as published if you need to. And again, every missed approach procedure, by the way, is going to say and hold at the end. Every missed approach procedure is going to say and hold at the end because they want you to hold. They don't want you going anywhere. They don't want you doing one lap and then trying to resequence yourself. And odds are also, and if you have to go missed, they're probably never going to tell you fly the published missed. They're going to say runway heading 3000 and contact departure, and then they're just going to vector you back around. More remarks or what are they? Alternates right here. Simultaneous approaches are authorized. It's just letting you know that, hey, you might have an airplane right off your right side shooting the ILS or RNAV, whatever goes into runway 4 right. You might have a plane right next to you doing that. So it's just letting you know that. The T means that there are non-standard takeoff minimums, I believe, and the A means that there can be alternate minimums, I think. So that's another page that you'd have to go and look at, which again, for the purpose of this video, we're not necessarily going to do that. Autopilot coupled approaches not applicable below 200 feet. So basically you need to click the autopilot off and hand fly it below 200 feet. That's why this is also only a category 1 approach, which we will talk about in a little bit here. So that's about it. Talked about the missed approach already. ATIS frequencies, just different. So if you're coming from the southwest, you'd use this ATIS frequency. If you're coming from the northeast, you'd use this frequency. I'm actually not sure. That's just that's an odd. If I was flying into JFK for like my first time, I'd probably just start with this frequency right here. So you have your ATIS frequencies, and again, I'm sure the chart supplement would be able to teach you exactly what those are about. But again, I just want this to be kind of a general high-arcing view of ILS approaches, how to do them in the sim, and also how to do them in, you know, again, this isn't intended for flight instruction purposes, but also kind of how to do them in real life, because this is just, it's the same process. So anyway, approach controllers, this is a military frequency, and then this would be the approach control frequency you would expect to talk to on the way in. Tower frequencies as well. We're using 4 left, so we'd expect 23.9. Again, these are military frequencies. These two on the right are military frequencies. These two on the left are civilian frequencies. Ground control, same thing, military and civilian. So moving on down the line here, VGSI and ILS glide path are not coincident. So basically that means the angle is 3 degrees. Touchdown, you're going to cross the touchdown zone at 75 feet. Which means that whenever you break out, you might be looking, if you're looking for the Pappies or the Vazzies, you're going to be maybe high or low, basically. You could be 3 red, you could be 3 white, but you're still on glide slope, even though you might not necessarily be perfectly aligned. here is the, we have 2,000 feet. This is the pictures, essentially, of the missed approach procedure. So climb, maintain 2,000, which we have first, climb to 2,000. Then a climbing right turn to 3,000 feet, and a right turn to the JFK, the Kennedy VOR, radial 062, which we have. It's written up here, and it's pictured out down here to Duffy intersection. So that's 2,000, straight ahead of 2,000, right turn to 3,000, 062, Duffy intersection. Pretty simple. Here's where we're holding at right now. This is an unpublished hold. There's no hold here on the chart. We made this up essentially in the FMC. You'd want to say, you know, we're crossing a roque at or above 2,000 feet when it's above the little line right there, when it has a little line above, the numbers above the line. That means you want to cross that fix, a roque, at or above 2,000 feet. And then down to 1,500 feet or above. The little X means glide slope intercept, and final approach fix is crystal at 1,500 feet we want to be at, and this is 5 miles out. It's a 5 mile final. This is an 11 mile final. This is a 1.6 mile final. This is essentially the V right here means it's your visual descent point. If you're visual, you can disregard the glide slope and follow the VASIs and PAPIs. This is your missed approach point. When this starts right here, that's your missed approach point, but really you never look, it's just a visual reference for where it would be in space on the chart. Obviously you wouldn't necessarily follow that, and you wouldn't be like, oh, I think I'm there, like in real life. No, you go missed whenever you have hit 231 feet. This is in MSL right here. This first number is in MSL. Let me zoom in a little bit for you guys here. 231 feet MSL. Or 4,000 RVR. This number is in thousands, and it's RVR. Unless it says like 1 or something, and then it's like 1.5 or like 2.5, then that means miles. But generally speaking, it is, if you see an 18 here, it's 1,800 RVR. If you see a 20, 2,000 RVR. In this case, it's 4,000 RVR. This is AGL. The 218 right here is an AGL, so it's 231 feet MSL, 218 feet above the ground, and then these are military numbers right here as well. And then also, I forgot to mention earlier, the touchdown zone elevation is 13 feet, right? So we have what's 18 plus 13, 31. So the touchdown zone, so 200 feet above this is essentially going to give you this. And 18 plus 13 is 31. You have 231 feet. So that's how that works. This next line is not really something you would brief unless you were doing the localizer approach. So this is the minimums for the straight-in localizer approach, runway 4 left. So if you did not have your glide slope, the minimums are higher, right? They're about 230 feet higher at 460 feet. So you'd have to see the runway by 460 feet. And at 5,500 RVR are the minimums to shoot this approach. Visibility is controlling on these, by the way. So if you're going in somewhere and it says you have 300-foot ceilings, but the RVR is 3,000, you technically would not be able to go past the final approach fix and shoot this approach. Same thing, AGL and then military numbers. This is circling minimum, so for whatever reason, if they had you circling in JFK, which again you'd do in a simulator, you know, you take it down to the minimums, you'd be visual. So this is a good example of this right here. So 640 MSL are the minimums for circling, and 1 mile, that's not 1,000 RVR, that's 1 mile of visibility that you need. So you just kind of have to know the difference there. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. And then this is, so zooming in a little bit more, I can't move it over, which is frustrating. So this little chart in the bottom right, let me see, it still serves the purpose. So it shows you a few things. So these little squiggles and stuff like that right here at the threshold of runway 4 left are actually where the extended, what's it called? The extended threshold, whatever it's called, where that ends and where the runway starts is there's little, there's 3 little ovals. The P with a circle means PAPIs are on the left, so when you break out, you're looking for PAPIs on the left side. And then you have the VOR right here, you have the tower. It just has some little information, and this is actually your inbound course right here. This is showing how you're gonna come in to the runway, and it's particularly helpful if it was an offset approach. So like if final approach was coming from like this way or something, and you had to like dog leg on short final, it's helpful to know, okay, I'm gonna need to make a left turn and be looking out my left window for the runway. And this is also right here, if you were shooting the localizer only approach, final approach fix to missed approach point is 4.5 miles. So basically, after you hit your final approach fix, you'd have 4.5 miles before you have to go missed, or depending on your approach speed. So we'd be, what are we doing? 155 is our approach speed. So we'd be about 1 minute and 48 seconds. So once we hit our final approach fix, we have 1 minute and 48 seconds to see the runway, or else we have to go missed if we're shooting the localizer only approach, which we're obviously not doing today. So that's about it, guys. That's pretty much everything on an ILS approach chart. Anyways, like we were saying, that was honestly pretty in-depth, maybe a little more in-depth than I really wanted to go. Again, this video is just going to be for, you know, anybody in your instrument training who needs a guidance. Again, this is not flight instruction purposes, but anybody in your instrument training who's looking for a little bit extra help with reading approach plates and whatnot. So with all that being said, guys, we can probably go ahead and quit this hold and get ready for the approach. And this is going to kind of turn into the section of the video where we talk about how to shoot an approach in the PMDG 737. So we're going to exit the hold. It should be, we are below the glide slope, which is good. We can see that there. Let's go ahead and descend for 2,000, because that's, we can do that legally. It's 2,000 or above for that. We will arm approach mode. We'll go auto brake to 2 here. We'll go ahead and get, there we go. It's been so difficult to do that. We'll get our lights back on here. So down to 2,000 feet we go. We're going to wind our speed back to about 200 knots for now.
$2,500.
Oh, wow. Okay, wait. This is like backwards. Okay, so let's just do this. We're going to go ahead with... We're going to keep this turn coming like this. We're going to go heading select, and we're going to kind of... Well, you know, we can kind of turn this into like a base, I guess. We can... Let's just go with a turn like this. Let's just go direct to like Crystal. Actually, no, that's a bad idea. No, wait. Okay, bad idea. Let's just... We're going to come back a little bit. We'll do like a 245 heading. We'll make a little loop-de-loop for this waypoint here. And we're going to start with flaps number 5. So we can keep these turns a little bit tighter as well. We'll go to 180 knots. And flaps 5, so... Oh, shoot. It captured the localizer. Well, we're going to find out together what's going to happen here, because... Not really 100% sure. Crystal is at 1,500 feet, so let's go ahead and we'll set 1,500 feet for Crystal, and we'll start dropping it down for that. We're going to need to get more or less configured here. Let's go to flaps 10. Arm speed brakes. And just start switches to continuous. And generally speaking, 3-mile final or a dot above the glide slope, you want to be fully configured gear down. So, or 4-mile final, I mean. And we're at about an 8-mile final here on this runway. Oh, one last thing, guys. In terms of categories of approaches, it's really just based off of how bad the weather is. So if you're in a situation where you have really bad weather, worse than this, I'm not actually sure what the weather is going to JFK right now. If you're in a really bad situation, the weather's terrible, everything like that, then you would consider doing, this is considered a Category 1 approach because it's just to 200 feet. Category 2 approaches, I believe, go down to like 150 feet are the minimums. Category 3, there's 3 categories of Category 3 approaches, 1, 2, and 3. I believe they go down to like 100. What did I say? I said 150 for Category 2. It's like 150 and then like Cat 3 sea is like 0 visibility, which I don't think there are even any of those types of approaches in the United States that are authorized for total 0 visibility. That's just not a good day to go flying. So let's go ahead with gear down and let's go to flaps 15. About to catch our glide slope. Let's go to flaps 25. And we'll bug our reference speed and go to flaps 30. So that's pretty much it, guys, and we are all configured. Setup might be a little fast for flaps 30, but we'll see. Pretty much all configured and set up to shoot this approach. Like I said, this should be a Category 1 approach. I don't think it's going to be down to anything less than... Oh, shoot, we didn't set our minimums, actually. That's a pretty important part of a ILS approach. Minimums were 231. 231 were the mins here. So real fast, we'll just go ahead and set those. They come up right there. And yeah, we're already getting some of the runway environment in sight and everything, so no issue shooting this approach here, guys. So we should get it nice and easy, and a good way to kind of wrap up this ILS approach video by shooting an ILS approach. All right, guys, I'll go ahead and shut up and let you guys watch and finish out the rest of this video.
Plus 100. Glide slope. Minimums. $100. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Alright guys, welcome to JFK. Definitely a pretty sporty approach there. Yeah, that was a fun one. We'll take a look at the landing replay and everything. Lost the glide slope there, if you guys noticed. It said glide slope and it totally went away. Not sure if that's a real life issue or not, but maybe, you know, that it was right around minimums. That could be why it says the autopilot approaches are not authorized. Coupled autopilot approaches are not authorized below 200 feet, and maybe that was why right there. So it's things like that. Those are the reasons why you need to make sure you're listening to the things in the remarks that are on the approach plate. Other than that, guys, like I said, I don't really have anything else to say. That is pretty much how to shoot an ILS approach from a professional pilot. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and yeah, thanks for watching. Like I said, be in touch or be on the lookout for the next types of approach, which we're going to talk about RNAV approaches next. So yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.